Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. Welcome to my channels to all my viewers. Uh, Yesterday I discussed about handling objection, but I will, but this time we will continue about handling objection too. So, to all my viewers, friends, listen to me about handling objection. If you are a part of a salesmanship or you are a sales agent, so watch this video. Objection based on buying decision of product. Objection based on buying decision of product. When an objection in this group is raised, you may assume that the prospect has been awakened to his needs, feels dissatisfied with things as they are, but he is not yet sure that your product will be satisfied need. Wait po. This objection, if valid, may most frequently be met by use of the compensation method or by the indirect denial if they are not valid, if the goods are not of the best quality. The salesman usually has lower price to offer a compensating inducement. It may be that the compensation method can be used in another way. Sometimes the prospect compare one aspect or characteristic of the goods with the same aspect or characteristics of a competitor's product, a point-for-point comparison. For few products can win all the points in such matches, but the salesperson can be prepared to minimize the significance of those in which his product compare unfavorably if the saleswoman has reason to fear that his goods will not stand the close scrutiny of as to quality. She must avoid making extravagant claims early in the interview, for this will be thrown back at her later. The presentation should rather devoted to pointing out what others advantage the products possess. If the product actually is a second or an irregular, this should be admitted at the outset before the prospect call attention to it, thus disposing of the objection that is not up to standard. The use of analogy is sometimes resorted to in meeting the quality objection. You can buy a Licolin for the price of Ford. Although the same company makes the both and more Fords are sold the Licolins. In other instances, you may be able to show the prospect that the several features or quality he priced in the other products are realities superfluous for his application they are needed. Certainly, another product has much heavier duty motor but is not need in your situation. Why pay for something you don't need? Here, the concept of useless quality can be brought for thing you don't need. Here, the concept of useless quality can be brought forth. All parts of product should be designed to give the same length of life. It makes a little sense to design a motor to last 10 years if the gear mechanism are designed to last only 5, the customer pay for 5 years. Quality that he won't get. A paint sales reps claims that this paint will last for 10 years, but if the customer is going to repaint in 5 years because of soot and dirt, he needs only a 5-year paint. How many lifetime guarantee pens are still in use? Few people have any desire to use something a lifetime. This is one of the bases for the success of time watches. These are some of the arguments that can be put by the salesman who is trying to meet the quality objection. I have a friend who bought your product and was unhappy with the salesman. Cannot deny this statement, so he tried to learn more of the fact. He urged the prospect to tell him all about. Often this will reveal the complaint. The, com- the complaint is uh, trivial and sounds silly when brought out into the open. It is not thus disposed of, the salesman may say. This is the first I have heard about this, and I'll take it right up with my company and with these friends of yours. Could I use your phone to ask him what he thinks we ought to do about it? This may be served to screen out the false from the honest objection and certainly impress the prospect with the salesman's eagerness to do the right thing. The salesman might say, now that that is taken care of, and I assure you it will be. I hope you will give my proposition the same consideration that you would have given if it is you have never heard of your friend's experience. Complaints are similar to some objection and should be handled similarly. Don't deny them, don't contradict, and don't ignore or ridicule them. Hear them. If true, agree the prospect has ground for grievance. Don't blame your company, credit, or shipping department. Accept the responsibility yourself. Explain how it's happened, making it clear that it was the most unusual and that step has been taken to ensure that it could never happen again. That turn attention to the best way to correct or settle trouble. If the complaint is justified, try to make an adjustment at once. It may be smart to ask, what do you feel would be a fair adjustment, or what do you think we ought to do about this? Stay cheerful, don't be grudging in your attitude. Don't dicker with prospect if he seems to be a straight shooter. Act glad to square things with him. The embarrassed salesman might be able to take some of the steam from the customer barbs by saying, obviously it is disturbing to learn of such occurrence, but you will have to admit that such things happen in all companies and with all products. That can happen to you no matter from whom you buy it, and you know it. The important thing is to know whoever are, how often does that mistake happen, and when they do occur, what kind of service and factory to support will be forthcoming. So let's go right into our total performance records. With that statement, the salesman tries to convince the prospect that his firms give excellent service to back up its relatively few mistakes, guarantees case history, testimonials, personal telephone call to satisfy user repair records, and visit to facilities, and all techniques can be used. I've used the AJAC machine for a long time and I simply like it better than yours. Many times some product objections are broad-based attitude solidly backed with a strong prejudice. This situation frequently is based on the sheer familiarity. People are comfortable with the familiar. The new and unknown frightens them. A secretary learned to type on a IBM machine in school. She is familiar with its working and used to its task. She will have products objection to changing machine. The best strategy for overcoming this type of broad products objection is to get the prospect to agree to attract usage. Leave the machine and let her get used to it. A man has been wearing a Freeman suit for several years and truly satisfied. Changing his buying habits will be difficult. You can offer him a free trial, so you can ask a question such, I am interested knowing exactly what is you like about this suit. By getting the prospect outline the features he likes the competitor's product, the salesman learns what to stress his product. Also, such question will aid is determining if the for the other product is based on some solid reason for its only prejudice or habit. About the only workable strategy available to the enterprising salesperson in such cases in appeal for mindedness and fair playing and giving the products a fair trial. If the salesman is confident that the product will sell itself, it's use the prospect. All effort should be focused upon getting the prospects to try it, with no obligation. Since most people believe that they are open-minded, they should respond when the salesman say, "Yes, I hear that the Ajax machines gives good results, but I would like to know more about it. As you are open-minded, objective individual, I would really appreciate it if you would give machine a fair trial and then tell me just how it's stacked up again. Ajax, this would help me considerably because right now I am not as well acquainted with the Ajax as I would like to. I like your house, but I need a double garage instead of the single ones you put on all this model." Frequently, a product objection can be answered most simply by giving the prospect what he wants. Many builders are in a position to answer, "Fine, let's get everything down on paper to see. For just a little, I can get you a double garage. I personally agree with you. A double is a good investment and a real improvement over of this model." A customer of a main apparel store complained that a certain sport shirt was not tapered sufficiently around the waist of the suit. He states, "The owner said we can have our alteration shop take its no suit for a slight alteration charge, as many was not importance to what particular customer the sale was made. Normally, that was owners give free alteration all major items of apparel as means for meeting objection as to the fit of the suit and cost. Other times we meet objection about the design, color or fabric of his garment by offering for order from the factory exactly that was the customer wants. Sometimes they take him up on it. Other times the objection evaporates. It is this field of the objection that salesman's imagination can save many lost causes. A woman motorist wanted a particular shade of pink paint on a new car she was trying to buy. She had been to several dealers and none of them had the color in a car line. Our hero took the color swatch from the young lady and asked her to pick our models she wanted. He merely figured into the deal the cost of the repaint job and made the sales. The salesman should always examine his position carefully to see if it is possible to actually give the customer the exact product wanted. Can the can the product be altered in some way to meet the objection? A clerk in a woman ready to wear departments claim that she frequently has to rearrange the dress to confirm the customer desire. She sniffs up unwanted flower or button, adds a different belt, or perhaps put some costume jewelry on it. The salesperson who is willing to go out of his way to give the prospect what he wanted will find closing the sale to be easier, and the customer appreciative people like to be catered to. Objection based on buying decision 5. Price. This objection covers the aim of such matter as price, terms, delivery, advertising, allowances, services, and many other factors that directly bear on the out-of-pocket cost of the product. When the prospects say your price is too high, this may be mean any one of several things. First, it may be mean that in his opinion your product is not worth the price you're asking. It is not a good value, or he may be saying in effect, I, I haven't enough money to pay your price. This, of course, is a different matter, for it's assumed that it with the prospect did have sufficient money he would buy. Naturally, the approach used in handling this type of price objection is entirely different from the required to answer the first. In the latter case, the salesman should attempt to work out some plan of payment that would be meet the prospect financial requirement. In the former case, he would use one of the several of the various techniques discussed later in this section for building up the value of the product in this product's mind. In others instances, the prospect may be saying, I think I can buy our product elsewhere for lost money. The prospect is sold on your product and would it buy a price if were for these other opportunities she has in the minds. The techniques used to handle this type of objection naturally vary further from those previous used. In conclusion, before the salesman can hope to answer a price objection, he must first certainly exact what the prospect is objecting to. It is necessary to determine whether the price objection is one of the value, lack of money, or competition. Now it's time to discuss several methods of meeting these different types of price objection. Now it's hidden quality or merits. The classic answer to value objection has usually been to focus effort or in increasing the merits of the products in the eyes of the prospect. Many times the reason for an item's higher price are not obvious but must be specifically reason for an item. Higher price are not obvious but must be specifically pointed out. After all, if a product carries a legitimately higher price, there must be some reason for it. Therefore, prove the reasons. Sales representative for a check writer designed to prevent checks from being raised. Use this method effectively. I have a watch here. What would you estimate its worth? You don't know because you have not examined the works. That is true. You cannot tell whether it is worth $10 or 100 by merely by looking at the outside. What is true of this? What is even more true of our machine? Inside this machine are 7 segments, each with 10 individual dice of hard composition besides an oscillating into stationary dice, making 73 in all. Every character must be true to the thousand of an each. This means the finest kinds of workmanship. From here, the salesman goes on to explain other hidden parts of the machine, stressing quality of all the way. The salesperson for a manufacturer trying to sell to a purchasing agent and another manufacturer may find it effective to say, no doubt your own salespeople have to meet the same objection every day and they answer in the same way I'm going to answer you. You believe that your product is good, that is worth what you ask for it. You could probably cheapen in the places, but you don't want to sacrifice quality to do it. We are exactly the same boat, and I know you understand. John Ruskin, nearly 100 years ago, wrote, there is hardly anything in the world that some man cannot mix a little worse and sell a little cheaper, and the people who consider a price only are this man slowly prey. Another approach to this problem is to make quality and benefits and standouts so emphatically that price seems relative and important. The familiar story of the sales of potatoes illustrates this method. Two farms wagons stood in a public market. Both were loaded with potatoes in bag. A customer stopped before the first wagon. How much are potatoes today? She asked the farmer wife, so he was selling them. $1.25 a bag, replied the farmer's wife. Oh my, protested the woman. That is pretty high, isn't it? I give $1 for the last bag I bought. Tater has gone up, was the only information the farmer's wife gave. The housewife went to next wagon and asked the same question, but Maria McGear knew her potato, as the saying goes. Instead of treating her customer with indifference, she replied, these are the specially fine wheat potatoes, madam. They are the best potato grown. In the first place, you see, we only raise the kind with small eyes so that there will be no waste in peeling. Then We sort them to grade out calls so you get only full size goods potato. Then we wash all potatoes clean before sucking them. As you see, you can put one of this bag in your parlor without without soiling your carpet. You don't pay for a lot of dirt. I'm getting $1.50 a bag for them. Shall I have them put in your car or will you take them now? Maria McGarry sold two bags at a higher price than competitor as in spite of the fact that the customer had refused to buy because she thought the price was too high. Although it's proved that the customer idea of price depends entirely upon the ideas in his or her mind, the more you know about what you are selling regardless or whether it is highly technical product or just a potato, the better able you will be to overcome price objection. Customers should not allow to feel that price is too high. They won't feel price or high if you know the fine points of your quality merchandise as well as the farmer's wife knew her potatoes. A sales rep for health kit justify the higher price. As for them of those a competitor whose skills are quite similar in appearance, by showing the prospect of cutaway cross-section of the two skis, he pointed out certain details of construction which obviously were superior to and more costly than the competitors' wares. Sometimes the idea that the product is truly of high quality can be established if the salesman focuses the prospect attention upon one key part or component and proceed to prove its quality beyond doubt, thus suggesting that the rest of the product is similarly constructed. But you protest suppose the product is truly overpriced, is not good value, then why are you representing it? Remember, we began this study by strongly maintaining that you must believe is what you are selling for whom is being sold. If you feel that your products are not good value, you better look for another job. Saving or profits. Many times, particularly in selling to industrial concern or middlemen, the qualities of merits of the product may be completely besides the point. The important for factor business executives look for its product's ability to save them money or make them profit. Suppose a certain product cost but $100 to make and was obviously cheap construction. However, it would be save the prospect $6,000 during the first year. Would the buyer refuse to pay $1,000 for it? In pricing theory, costs do not determine prices, the market does. Costs determine profits and therefore who stay in business. A salesman should not get into the habit of thinking that the price of this product must be justified on a cost basis. Because often it will not be possible to do this. After all, it's often impossible to ascertain the cost of a certain product. Do 4 quarters of beef cost more than hindquarters? No, but they have no price different in order to clear the market in equal amount. The best justification for a high price is the product will save make the buyer more than his price. If you can prove the fact that the prospect will buy apparel store owner was objecting to a sweater salesman that his prices were too high, the sweater were highly advertised line which sold for around. The salesman's reply, would you rather sell $50 sweater or $30 one? You get about 40% on each, so why not be making $20 on each sweater sales rather than $12? Besides, it's actually easier to sell our $50 line that is being pushed vigorously than it's persuade customer to accept your presence. Now the merchant and was pleased to find that the salesman was right. His sweater sales double that your year with the 50 lines leading the parade. Most industrial sales are built around the profit saving which will accrue to the buyer. Once this has been convincingly demonstrated, prices seldom aware. IBM electric typewriter are the highest price line in the industry, but they are leading seller. The huge to company was able to obtain a some price for rotary diamond drilling bit because it saved on the oil. Drilling contractor considerably money as compared with the old cable drilling method. In conclusion, one of the best methods for overcoming a price objection is to show that the product would not cost the buyer a cent. It would actually make money. If such the case, the salesman can reply to the objection, I can afford to buy it with you, can afford not to buy it. Break down price into smaller unit. Sometimes the high unit price of an item may scare the prospect into making price objection without really giving to the exact how much is being asked for it. Big price tags can be frightening regardless of the values of the present real estate. Salespeople continually encounter a great reluctance to make an offer by people to whom the prices are frightening such amounts and beyond their comprehension, even though they may be quite reasonable for the property involved. In adding machines, salesperson say, I have already shown you how you can save money by the purchase of our machine, but I see that I have not made myself clear in comparing the cost of machine and the saving that this will give you. You have already told me that your loss through incorrect additions, etc., totals of several cents per day. All right, let's bring the cost of this machine down to cost per day. Let's assume that you will wish to renew the machine every 5 years by turning in the old machine on a new one and paying the balance in cash. The price of the machine is $350 and at the end of 5 years it can be turned into for about $100. Thus leave you a cost of $250 over a period of 5 years or $50 for 1 year. Dividing that by 300 is the number of working days in a year. We have a cost of 16 2/3 cents per day. You present system in certainly costing you more than that, isn't it? Door-to-door door-to-door salespeople have long used this technique to show the prospect how little is really being asked. One vacuum cleaner sales rep in New York developed what he called his Strip Avenue bus technique, in which dramatized the fact that the cost per week for his product will sell less than the cost of a bus ride to downtown Manhattan. One book saleswoman equated to the cost of her set of encyclopedia to a quart of milk. She would say, Mr. Jones, if your doctor told you that your son needed an extra quart of milk each day for physical development, you would find money to buy it, wouldn't you? Well, that is all I'm asking. Billy needs to this book for his mental development and all the cost of the quart of milk each day. His mental development is just important to you as physical well-being, isn't it, Mr. Jones? The basic idea behind this breakdown technique is to quote the price on some basis the product itself. The price can relate to some short units of time, some units of productivity. A paper sales reps made sales of a quality letterheads to purchasing agent by saying, is it is worth 1/10 of a cent you to know your man is being represented on the best letterhead paper available. That's all it will give you the best instead of what you are now buying. Of course, one way to meet the price objection is to offer easy to terms of payments, reducing the statement of the price to fraction of the original amounts. Real estate agents often remark that many buyers care about at home price. All they want to know is how much down and how much amount. An executive complains about the high price of cheap writer, to which the salesman's reply, our 250 machine will last for 50 years. Let us figure it on the internal revenue service 10 basis. The other 10 years are for the free. Okay, you save the protection, you win. It's bargain. More recently, salespeople offering leasing plans to overcome price objection. Okay, $250 more than you want to pay right now. I lease it to you for $10 a month. Prestige. Usually, people who are buying a product for its prestige now its price and do not object. JP Morgan is reputed to have two young men who had asked him have no business owning one. The regular customer entering the stoven room of an exclusive department store fully expect to pay the high price as for that the brand of artware. However, many times certain products are on the borderline of prestige or the prospect are not fully aware of the product reputation. The salesperson must develop some tactful ways of informing these people of the situation without offending them. This problem of communicating a prestige price is a quite touchy and in bangle it can lose the firm potential customer. People sense being talked down to or insulted by some statement implying that they can pay the price. Perhaps they can't afford the product of hands, but is still no reason to alienate them of as future customer for many people acquire money later in life and retain memories of his life from certain people. One dress saleswoman frequently used the following reply to objection that a certain dress seeming to be high priced for its quality. When you buy a dress from us, you are not buying merely fabric and stitching. You are buying assurance that you will be dressed in the best of taste and that no other woman in the city will have a dress similar to yours. You will be a unique. The price for a high fashion can never be measured by fabrics and workmanship, only by what it is does to you for you. If the dress is not for you, any price would be too high. If it makes you elegant and brings out the real you, the price is low. A design engineer for an electronics firm planning on making a high fidelity phonograph objected to the relative high price a certain well-known brand of record changer which was to be used of a component. The sales rep said, "You will be admit that of all the changers of the market, we have the best known. You name and the reputation for being the most reliable you need me. Won't you? With our changer in your box, your customers as people won't have to explain to their customer quality of their changer. Our name is speaks for itself. The changer is one of the visible components in your unit and naturally is one of its most question will be directed why compromise here. Compromise if you must some hidden component that doesn't affect sales appeal so much. In conclusion, if a product truly possesses prestige, a clever salesperson can find the proper words to convey that to the prospect with offending comparison. Many times the prospect unfavorably reacts to price only as a result of not having carefully compared it with other products selling for similar prices. A further objective strenuously to the seemingly high price a bicycle for his own until the salesman asks, "How much did you pay for those gold clubs? I see your car. Which do you think it takes time and effort and golf clubs bicycle since the man had just laid $300 for his club he had no alternative but to buy the bicycle when the price difficult to see the base on comparison between the salesman product and competing one, it may be good strategy to get exact difference between the two and then show clearly just what your prospect offer for the extra amount asked. In this way, by stressing exclusive advantage, the difference in price may be made to appear small. A potential buyer of filing cabinets complained that he could be another brand for $10 than was being asked for particular well-known brand. The salesman's reply, "Let's see you say that $10 in difference between my brand and the one you have in mind. Let me know you what you are getting for $10. First, our cabinet are 2 inches deeper, giving you about 8% more filing space on $50 investment. That one alone in worth $4. Next, if you will inspect that ball bearing rollers on which our drawers are mounted, you will find them much superior to the friction roller used to in the other brand. Next, look the way the movable support in which drawer is operated. Our works must easier feel the way our drawers lock shut. It is obvious that this is quality hardware, so you see you are getting a lot quality and superior performance for your $10. The saleswoman's attempt to sell complete outfit aluminum cooking utensils costing perhaps $100 minimize the price by comparison. How often do you use your piano, Mrs. Herring? It must have cost around $1,000. You use it almost day for a few minutes. Good. Few people use piano much, but they appreciate when they do use it. You feel that it's well worth this investment. As you say, we are here only a few years or at the most and ought to make them genuinely pleasant as possible. Now take this aluminum outfit, you will certain a fraction as much. Besides, you must have utensils to cook with. It is only question of getting the best. Proper cooking is the very foundation of good health in the family. I have shown you that owing to their long and these utensils less per year than others, but if they did cause more good health in the family. I've shown that owing their long life, these utensils cost less per use are there, but if they did cause more good health, is pretty cheap at the price, isn't it? And think of the compliments you will get on your cooking. Sometimes the retail shopper object I saw the same thing for a sales lower price bank. When this objection is raised, is thus little good to deny. It flatly. It may be true if it is not contradiction, accomplishments, nothing. It boils down to a matter of the customer words against the salesman. The clerk therefore will not deny the statement, but will ask question with the aim finding out then fact. You can doubtless find something a lower price, but did not you notice careful the material used in the other coat? Are you sure it was an heavy of this and was made of virgin wool instead of wool that had been used once before? There are no imperfection in the weave of this one and the color is very fashionable. Perhaps the other article was duplicate designs in a cheaper material often found in leather goods, such for sauces or up, upholstered furniture. The salesperson who suspect this should set about to educate the customer on material so that the latter can tell the difference. The salesperson may compare the article under discussion with cheaper article carrying stock and point out the difference. These look almost identical at first glance, but the closer examination show that lining is not so durable and the color is more ordinary shade of brown. The customer may indeed be wrong, for the goods may be handled only by the one store of the city. In this case, the salesperson can point out that the store has the exclusive agency for the city and that is unlikely that the other store is selling the same article. It's occasionally happened that the store will obtain through of the abuse channel a small quantity of an article sold by another store that has been given the exclusive agency. The first store then makes much ado about the article using is perhaps as a loss leader while the stock lasts. This is often done with trademark clothing or shoes, the practice being to have in stock unusual size or style so that they will not readily sell. If the salesperson suspects that his customer is repairing such situation, he might ask, were you able to find the size you wanted there? Sometimes the customer statement is true. In the case the clerk was the alternative, the first is to show that although the price of this particular article may be a trifle higher at the store, the price of the other articles may be easily to less. One can explain that in marketing new goods estimate of two merchants as the fair selling price may differ. slightly. The other method is to point out the store perhaps offer and other advantages that maybe compensate for the slightly higher price. This last point is illustrated by the experience of a man who sent out to certain store to buy prefer a shoes. He found a satisfactory style at $25 but could not get his size. Going to another store, he found the same shoe, but it was priced of $225.50. He asked the salesman why this store charged more than the other for the same shoe. The salesman smiled and replied, "Here's the way I figure it. In the first place, for the extra 50 cents, you get the shoe. Air pause that means we kept larger and stock are more likely to have some left over in the end of the season, on which we either are compelled to take a loss of carry until in the second place you can have this loss charge which you could not do at the other store. We have the most liberal exchange policy of any store in the city. If the goods are not satisfactory in every way or if you don't want them, you may return them without trouble or embarrassment. In addition, this store tries to educate its salespeople to an appreciation of their duty towards the customer. This advantage you receive for the extra 50 cents and don't overlook important fact that you get shoe. And concluded with a smile, this man proved himself worthy of the name salesman and the customer was satisfied. The way in which the customer offered the objection will help the salespersons to know how to meet it. If it is offered seriously, the matter is worth discussing. If it is mentioned in a casual manner, it's probably a flimsy excuse made by the shopper who has little intention of buying. Bear in mind that people continually buy items of a store for prices much higher than they know they would have to pay elsewhere, but they aren't elsewhere. They will pay to convince shopper goods here and now. Questioning. The question technique can be proved quite effective in handling certain types of price objection. Many times a person believes a price to be high only because of ignorance or lack of thought about it. The right question can encourage a prospect to realize that the price is in line after all. The salesman asks such question as, why do you think the price is out of line? Or what price do you in mind? Or I wonder what you have in mind when you say our price is too high compared to what? After getting the prospect to bring out this thought on the matter of price, the salesman can swing into one of the other methods for answering price objection. The choice depending upon the particular situation and covered by the question. Adjusting the price. Although the most salespeople do not have control over the prices charges for their goods, some authorize to meet competitive price under the same circumstances. Some fear have a policy of meeting any legally quoted price lower than that if the customer can show some tangible proof of the lower quotation. In such cases, the salesman should ask the prospect to give evidence of the lower price to which refer, and it will be immediately taken up with the home office. However, a word of caution, a salesman should be never intimate to a prospect that he can meet such a lower prices unless is certain of it. For to hold of the hope low price only to refuse in later will antagonize the prospect and cause him to ride the competitor camp. In a later chapter, many of the ethical problems connected with the price negotiation will be discussed in detail. It must be acknowledged that is many industry that is considerable price flexibility, which is a person trying to get everything he can, is prospecting trying to get price down. However, this is business negotiating. To be successful in such sparring of jewels, as person must learn never to give away his limit and to determine quickly those of the prospect. One must be able to judge what the market will be without letting other party to know how eager one is to sell. Above all, one must learn how to be firm where quoting a price. The slightest evidence any weakness will automatically force prospect to demand lower price. One must learn to close with another adjustment in price so that the prospect is not free to bargain the another price decrease or after obtaining the first concession. Real estate salesperson must become particularly adept at this type of bargaining in order to bring buyer and seller together. Handling the trade-in. In selling many products such as automobiles, television sets, vacuum cleaner, refrigerator, furniture, and typewriters, the salesman is likely to encounter a prospect who has a used article that he wishes says to turn in as part payment for the new one. Even selling industrial equipment, that says people must prepare the deal into markets. The new and the used, they must know how and where the sales of the new equipment. In nearly every case, prospect plays upon an old car stove a much higher value than it's actually possessed on the market. The salesman is faced with the problem of making two sales with that of the new article at the same time, depreciating the value of the used article because so many sales are ruined. At this point, it seems desirable to discuss briefly some of this method that have proved helpful. Number one, it is better not to place a valuation on the used article until after all the value is the new one has been fully explained. The prospect should be brought to desire ardently the new car before anything is said about how much will be allowed on the old one. The principle holds especially true when the salesman is not a position to allow very much on the old article. Of course, if the firm has the liberal trading allowance and the salesperson can appreciate the old article at a price, this is fact may be used as when talking point brought out early in the interview. Two, when the appraised value will be low of the appraising of the old article done by a third party rather than by the salesman, thereby an antagonism aroused by a low appraisal will not be aimed to so directly at the salesman. The phrasing should not be done in the presence of the owner. When it is done, every point leads of argument and makes the sales that much harder. Next, have a formalized appraisal program in which the prospect see that his possession is getting a complete examination rather than an offhand eyeball evaluation. The prospect will gain confidence in the firm integrity and thoroughness. And lastly, have some outside independent authority upon which to the base the trade-in price. Automobile dealers use the red and blue books to give an independent look to their pricing. Many appliances and office equipment manufacturers are furnishing their dealers with such trade information in order to support their valuation. The salesman might be print up his own trade-in valuation table to fall back upon in the case of emergency, blame the low trade-in valuation on someone else. Encourage the prospects to sell the equipment himself by showing how to do it and giving case story of others done. So now how can the salesman handle the prospect who insists that his car worth more more than the appraisal? Indirect denial method of handling objection is probably most widely used here. The salesman agreeing that the Ford bus has doubtless rendered splendid service, but in selling cars, for example, excuse me, the salesperson might turn to the classified section of the daily paper, showing the prospect that the price at which such cars are offered. He may visit one of our two used car market with him. He may show him the used car market report. He may show a duplicate bid or sales for a car of the same make and model. He may show actual cars the same make model for sale in the firm used car department. He may explain how expensive it will be to recondition the old car for the market, how selling expensive it will be fully as great as a new car, how rent and other overhead must be charged against the car. Once this person develop the following analogy for handling a situation is the prospect trade in apparently should be worth more than can be offered. I know how you feel. I own some stock. It's real good firm, good growth, goods earning in any ways as wanted to look at it. It was worth at least $60 share, but the market said it was worth only $42. You know, I never met a person yet the woman argument with the market. When the prospect insists that he has been offered more this for his old car by a rival dealer, what should be the salesman to do? There just one to do here, that is tell the fact about the largest trading allowance that some dealers given by the manufacturer. The prospect should not show that he may lose all these women when trade in the competing car should be by it. And all the vehicles the salesman must sell own car hard, pointing out its exclusive advantage and superior feature. Many salespeople claim that it's wise to praise the prospect who has traded in for the care he has taken of it. Some statements as I see that you have taken exceptional care of your present machine. That's good for it. It will allow you to give you top dollar for it. Of course, this tactic should not be used if it's obviously untrue. Most salespeople prefer to get the prospect to commit themselves on what they think they should for their trade before commit themselves on trade value. Sometimes the prospect is quite reasonable and the figure he gives the salesman can close on. For example, the salesperson may say that if I can get $5 for your trade in your will go ahead with this deal. Is that right? Okay, let's write up deal for the boss approval and see what's happened. On the other hand, the prospect will give the salesperson a figure for far out of line. That is, there is a little of the sales until the market has pounded some of inflation out of prospect system until has shop around and been educated into the value of his property. Other times, the salesman see that there's a good chance for a deal if he can but get around trade is smoothly. This phenomenon gave rise in automobile business to the price of giving the prospect what he wanted for his trade, but upping the price of the new products completely. In some instances, the salesman is wise, putting into the original price ample room for granting generous trading allowance. I will be right back to viewers. Wait for a few minutes. for waiting. Uh, let's continue to my discussion. Objection based on buying decision. Six source. Number six source. These objections are leveled against the firm that the salesman represent. Often they are not so much objection as question as can be met with straightforward statement and fact, covering such matter as age, firm, its size, its financial standing, affiliation with well-known firms, important customers, rate of growth, patents, health of other products, manufacturer efficiency, operation, sales labor relationship, etc. Sometimes, however, the prospect has had pleasant dealings with the firms and is personal friendly. For example, he may have dispute with the credit department over some claim. In this case, the salesman may be tempted to join with the prospect as giving his firm through bowling out. Such tactics, however, are bad for no buyer respect a disloyal representative of any concern. If mistakes may be, the sales rep can promise a careful investigation and proper adjustment of the difficulty. The use of analogy may also, you wouldn't refuse to patronize a barber shop just because a barber gave a full haircut, was would you? The other barbers are good, and even the one probably try extra hard to a good job on you next time. The sales rep must remember that he is the representative of house and must not be led into taking sides against his employer. Often the buyers have suffered an experience with the firm. The only way to correct the situation is to keep in cool until the prospect is convinced that the salesman's fine person is not in a way to blame for the misunderstanding. These tactics were should persistently haven't worked back thousands of former customers. Two most common causes of sales rejection are past experience with poor quality and late delivery. Oh. The rep is posed with the problem of proving the prospect that causes of those past experience no longer exist. The buyer must be given the reasons to believe that things have changed for the better. It is not easy to us in many cases. Some buyers permit personality to influence them to extents that seem ridiculous. The positive of an executive of the salesman's firms on political issue may prevent some narrow-minded prospect from patronizing that concern. One answer could be, do you refuse to sell to everyone who does not agree with you on this question? Perhaps the best way to meet this objection is to sidestep it. You may write our president wrong. There seem to be a lot of both sides, and I can figure the thing out, but I am sure that they would profit a lot from handling our line. Possibly the president of the corporation has been mixed up in an unsavory divorce than otherwise conducted himself in an undignified manner. The use of analogy is probably as effective as any method here. The salesman may say, you remind me a little bit of old deacons if you refuse to read the Psalm David because David get me into little scandal. Once the miser pointed of the Psalms were just helpful as if David handed sleep, but the deacon didn't like to patronize himself by reading his writing. The problem of prejudice is not easy to handle. You can just smash it with argument. It is often based on emotion or some experience unique with the prospect. The prejudice on general topics such as political personality, effort, sport, and educational method had better be avoided with the little comments by the salesman. A prejudice based on unpleasant experience must be treated with sympathetic respect and promise to set things right if this possible. Objections to the source are most frequently encountered in selling the large industry. whereas the ability of the firms to deliver the needed goods in proper quantities of a specified quality and on time is vital, many large concerns will not take the chance on a smaller, unproven firm, no matter how good his story of price may be. The such firms often find it difficult to break into big account except after a long period of selling effort. This larger firm usually maintains lists of approved vendors of sources of supply and firms are placed on this list. Only a team of the buyer's personnel has visited the seller plant and investigated his ability to perform as claimed as one small electronic firm selling exotic hardware to defense contractor has policy of automatically bringing the top executive the buyer's company to its plans for its hand exposure, its capabilities. Sincere testimonial for executive similar firms can go a long way toward assuring that purchasing agent nothing sells such as prospect better than a record of performance. The fact that the firm is one of the least approved supplier to certain known respected company is reassuring to a skeptical buyer. Objection on base decision 7. Objection based on buying decision number 7. The salesperson. Here's the prospect does not like the sales rep. This is often an objection that is hard to discover. As a matter of fact, the salesperson seldom knows whether or not the customer is refusing to buy for this reason. Most buyers do not tell the sales rep they do not like the way he spoke of his competitor of the matter. He told so the salesperson usually is compelled to guess at this objection and should always be on alert to discover personal weaknesses, unfortunate mannerism that result in unfriendly feeling on part of his prospect. As a rule, the pre-approach will disclose facts about the prospect that should help the sales rep to avoid running counter to a pet hobby or prejudice. Some says before after being turned down, he asked prospect if the refusal to purchase was based on a personal peculiarity that may be overcome in the salesperson is sincere in his request to buyer enlighten him and help him become more efficient. Obviously, if the salesperson has not played square with the buyer, the objection is invalid. For example, if she promised advertising and that were not forthcoming of if she is awarded to her customer of previous visit of his exaggerated the merits of her proposition, there is nothing left for us to do about acknowledges their error and promise to reform. Some buyers are cautious because of experience with an unscrupulous sales reps. I've been stung too many times on proposition that sounded good. A reply involving a judicious, obvious compliment and analogy may meet the objection, I suppose, to every person who had done much business had made some poor investment at time or at least feel that he has. However, if someone passed counterfeit many of you a couple of times, you wouldn't refuse thereafter to accept and all of the money offer you, would you? You would examine more carefully before you accept it, which is precisely that I would should likely have you to do with this proposition. Personal conflict though arise occasionally in which the salesman just can get along with a certain buyer. In such cases as Mary arranged swap account with another him firm salesman person, thereby benefiting per all parties, but this should not be common situation. If it is there's something wrong with the salesman, good salesperson are able to get along with almost anyone, especially when they know subscribes about the person in advance. Objection based on buying decision number 8. The motto of many people is never to do anything today that can be put off until tomorrow. So it is buying to prospect frequently once delay making decision if they can. It would seem the making decision to buy is a painful experience. One continually continually wears. I want to sleep on it. I want to talk it over with my wife. See me the next month and I'll be ready to buy. I want to think about it for a while. I want to look around a bit more. There is no end to the variation of the stall. The prospect just wants to avoid making a decision now. Admittedly, some procrastination are legitimate. The prospect has a consult with some higher executive or has to wait for some events to happen, but most of them are just excuses. Many procrastination are often as camouflage for other objection. Frequently, when the prospect say, "I think I look around some more," or "I have to think about it," what's she really saying it? I am not all persuaded to this in the deal for me. She remains persuaded thus you must go back and discover her real objection. The person who was unable to procrastination will never highly successful for too many sales will lose to more aggressive competitors. The following is told by settled real estate salesman. I am sitting in the office one Saturday afternoon taking my turn at floor duty when this couple walks in and asks if we will build a house on their lot in the south end. I check and find out that we do go that far south, so I asked some questions to find out what they need in the way of house. It turns out that they need a four-bedroom house of modest price. We had one about completed for show purposes, so I took them over the site and they fell in love with it. The price was right and we could deliver on time, so it looked like another site. However, as usually, they wanted a few minor changes made, which require a visit to our architect for cost estimated before we could sign a firm contract. I called and found that the earliest time we could get together was a Tuesday morning, so an appointment was made for then. The couple was extremely happy. They even took me to dinner and spent the hour telling me what a good outfit we were because we would quote firm prices and deliver dates instead of is giving them the renown they had been given elsewhere. Well, on Monday, I called to remind the prospect of the appointment and confirm it. I was greeted enthusiastically with big hello there, Mr. Salesman Gee. I'm sure glad greeted enthusiastically with a big hello, Mr. Salesman Gee. I'm sure glad you called. Guess what happened to us over the weekend? We bought a house some other salesmen had gotten hold of them on Sunday and sold them and used house talk taking the relative payment, which all goes to show that you, when people are ready to buy, they will find someone who will sell them. If you are stupid enough to turn them loose on site, you make mistake for nothing get them the signs to something right at the time and amending it after the architects had given that additional cost figure. As a matter of fact, they really got stung for her old house. They both did not fit their needs at all. Every salesman can match the story with just some of his own about how excellent the prospect got away when allowed to delay. One must prefer to cope with procrastination forcefully for the prospect are instead of agreeing to buy merchandise but adjusting arguing over timing of the sale. If they are the world sold out, it then the present is the best time to close the sale. For the love affair may wane if another sales reps get into the act. In the meantime, fortunately, there was a several good way of handling procrastination. First, learn to put a hook is close to provide the reason for buying today. Second, outline the advantage and disadvantage of waiting. Third, you may be able to use the standing room only close to discourage waiting. Finally, you may be able to use impending events as a good salesperson for acting immediately. Put a hook in the closed. Door-to-door salespeople continually face this problem of getting people to make up their minds of their first call. Hence, they have included in their position various premiums which are given the prospect for acting promptly. The automobile salesman claims that he is in the best position today. Give your top dollar for your old cars because there happened to come into office that morning, a person who was looking for a used car just like the one you are driving. We can get together today. I can give you more for an old car because we won't have to fix it at this party and we won't having sitting out on the lot. Many firms selling the middleman always a special deal for the reps to offer this being good. Only on this call, there is ample cost justification for such inducement, for it costs money to have a salesman make 2 or 3 calls to get order when the high may gotten in the first call. One book sales rep would say to the trade book buyer for a bookstore, if you give me your order now, I'll send you a couple of extra books for yourself. A bribe. Yes, effective, definitely. A machine tool sales rep would, when truthfully possible, put the following into his clothes jars of trim down and wheeling that has been looking for a milling machine just like yours. I can unload it for you as a good trade in which we can get going on this deal. Let me call and put together a deal for you. What do you gain by waiting? Many times the prospect will see the light by simply comparing what is gained by waiting with what is lost. Usually it gains little or nothing while the use of the product is lost for a period of time plus possible risks of price increases, etc. The salesperson may ask the prospect to write down on paper exactly what he expects to gain by waiting while the salesperson writes down what may be lost. A salesman for an industrial and janitorial service told a procrastinating prospect, you're a very businessman. It's obvious you have many things to do with your time. Well, I'm busy man too, so let's be nice to each other and get this business over with so you can both together affairs sign an order. You're not going to get a better deal if you spend another 100 hours searching for it. Standing room only close. In the next chapter, a more detailed discussion of this closing method is found, but right here it will be sufficient to point out that it can effectively prevent procrastination if truly used in many situations. The salesman can truthfully say, I am sorry, but I can promise that I will be able to make you the same offer later. Supplies may be a short price, may be increased, model may change, or deliver dates may be altered. There are many reasons why assessments cannot always promise that this offer will be the same at a later date. Some vacillating buyers have to be educated to the realities of the market. In selling real estate, one of the big problems is to get the prospect to promptly a hot property, one which will move off the market quickly. Experience may indicate that if the prospect don't act now, the property will be sold by the time their decision is made but many prospects do not believe such assertion. However, once a couple of lost a few desired properties to other who were more decisive, it become easier to deal with them. Sometimes the man can help this process along by relating easier to deal with them. Sometimes the salesman can help the process along by relating some real case history of people who were lost dream house because they vacillated. One sales rep would say, "You really love this house, don't you? In price, right, and it's attractive in every way, isn't it?" Well, I guarantee you that this price, right, and is attractive in every, isn't it? Well, I guarantee you that there's 100 couple rights in this instant in the city who are looking for a house that there are 100 couples right in this instant in the city who are looking for a house just like this. They will agree with you. You are right. Among this couple, the market now are some now that are barking when they see it and will grab it. In fact, I cannot guarantee if you that made an offer that instance the owner has not ready accepted another offer. If you want this house, then you had better make up your mind right now for a fee. Feel sure that this property will off the market soon. Few things will make a prospect want to buy quicker than the thought that he may not be able to buy her later. One Southern California builder, a luxury home, deliberately creates a standing room only environment around his project by only placing them on the market in small batches at a time and arranging it so the most boom and that batch had been previously spoken for. When the prospect walks into his trap, Southern California slang for the model home sale complex a builder erects from which says that home is intact. He managed to convey the impression that houses are almost all gone and the prospect is lucky the one or two left for himself. Some procrastination are valid. There are times when the prospect has good reason for procrastinating. Perhaps some of us are yet to be received. Perhaps the customer does not want to carry the goods around while shopping so that waits until just before going home to buy them. Perhaps approval must be obtained from the same other party. Whatever there may be instances in which the salesperson can deal little by, but try to pin down the prospect to a date by which a decision will be made. Try to arrange another appointment or try to excel or promise not to make a decision until this person can see the prospect again. Once you understand clearly the prospect is not going to buy immediately, you should start arranging meeting in the future at which decision can be made. Discussing question number one. It was suggested that one an excellent way to avoid procrastinating objection is to put a hook in the close. If you are the sales manager for manufacturer of office supply, what kind of bait would you furnish your sales people for their hooks? How can management assist in closing such sale? Number two, suppose a prospect simply will not believe what you say regarding objection, what should you do? Three, many insurance prospects claim that they have no need for insurance when they fact they are saying that they simply do not care about protecting their family. They are responsible. What kind of objection is responsibility? How can the agent meet it? Number four, what are the some of method by which a P person can meet a bias objection to the newness of a salesperson's company? Five, customer refuses to do business with you again because of unfortunate experience with his last purchase. What should you do? 6. There is an old saying in selling. Be your own casting director. It refers to the strategy of placing your prospect in the role you want them to play. If you want to prospect to be fair-minded, you tell them they are. Why does this frequently work? 7. Many car people have been known use selling technique known as a high bowling, in which they quote the car shopper at unrealistic high trading price in order to get prospect back into the showroom has completed shopping all the dealers in the area. They buy some fast, figuring the highest bowl price evaporates and the prospect is left facing the dealer price. Why does this frequently work? What is the basis its success? Number 8, when meeting lower a price quoted by a competitor, why does a good sales rep get the prospect signature on an order with a lower price before you going this superior for approval? 9, under the circumstances, does not accept a prospect objection to buying and quit. 10, if a prospect is told after you exhausted all your method for handling, so what should you do? These are the 10 discussion questions. You can answer it in your notebook or paper. Let's go to case study 14-1. National Can Company signing the contract. Don Bowen was the sales representative for the National Can Company in a territory in northern western Washington. Located in a small town in the territory was the Pacific Coast Canning Company, PACO, which was the largest single potential customer in his area. Unfortunately, they had been a steady customer of the United Can Company for many years. That was determined to eventually obtain this account for him. For several years, he dutifully called on all executives who were ever connected with letting the contract until he was now on familiar terms with them. He had given that whatever could never occasion arose. Paco had always had certain difficulty using United cans for acetate fruit. Until now, Don could not exploit this weakness since he knew his own cans would do the same as ununited. Quiet recently National solved this problem through research of a new type of lining. Don decided he would use these product improvements as advantage to get the Paco contract from United. He made sales presentation of new item on the interested executive of Paco and received an enthusiastic approval with the same indefinite commitments that the contract would be forthcoming upon expiration of the present one. 2 weeks later, Mr. Owens, the vice president of canning operation, called on and asked him to stop by see him sometimes. Don made appointment for 2 days later. Mr. Owens often conversation by saying some unfortunate hitches have developed in our negotiation. You know, Sam Bruce, United Salesman, will his daughter recently died. As you know, Sam has lived in town for a long time and his roots down there. We go to the same church and I remember a Rotary. When I told him that we are going to change can supplier, he was visibly shaken, but he took him very well all the time. However, he was anxious to see me just before I called you. He said that when he informed his boss of the development, he was told that if his loss or account, the company would have to move him to another district since the territory potential would be insufficient to permit keeping him here. He asked me to go with him to Chicago to explain the whole affair to top management to get him off the hook. They think he is both the account he won't buy the idea their prospect is no good, so I am going to Chicago tomorrow morning. We can sign our contracts when I return. Don said Don said that would be fine, made a definite appointment for 3 days later for signing the contracts. Upon his return from Chicago, Mr. Owen called Don and said, some very unfortunate developments took place in Chicago. They said outright that Barry would move some from the staff, resign with you because they just not had enough volume around here justifies cost. Other some credit would have been sold soon. I'll become all confused and felt so very formed some with in daughter very is so recently and is moving out this right age. Everything well, I signed for another year. I'm sorry for you, but you're young and can wait another year. Next year, I sign with you. Question number: what can do Don to save the situation? Number two: where did he lose this sale? Number three: have been how could it have been avoided? That is the question number three. Now, let's go to the case 14-2, the Kingpin Company, the hidden objection. Jim Ellis, salesman for the Kingpin Company, was extremely disheartened when he learned that he had not forgotten the faint contract for the coming year for the McCoy Company, a large defense contractor located in the King Company's hometown. This was the sixth straight year in which the contract, a very large, was awarded to any other firm. The King Company, well-established manufacturer, has a full line of quality paints. It was well known throughout the area and was the largest paint company in the region. It maintained a policy of being completely competitive price for the great paint being specified. Relationship between King and McCoy has always been good. There was nothing in the background that would indicate any source of objection. Jim has been able to ascertain the price of which contracts were let because it was not a buyer policy to play one supplier against another. All Jim knew was the XL Paint Company had gotten to beat the bid for the last 6 years. This made little sense to Jim. In no longer account was XL serious competition. It priced him to be relatively high for the quality of paint produced. XL was a small firm and the McCoy contract accounted for the large portion of its output. On several occasions, Jim had asked the purchasing agent of McCoy for an explanation but had been rebuffed by the statement, "The simply underbid you. There's nothing else I can say." The question number one: what do you think is the objection? Number two: what should Jim do about it? Okay, this is the end of my topic about the objection, the selling process, handling objection to. Now, let's go to the uh, next topic, the close. All right, the close. A salesman who cannot close sales is not a salesman. He is merely a conversationalist. A good salesperson is always a good closer. A poor closer is always a poor salesperson. Everything that is done before prospecting, pre-approach, approach, presentation, handling objection, all the preparation and effort have been focused on this objective. The sales reps who cannot close is like runner who trains faithfully all season, leads the field in the big race until 10 years for the tape and then falls down. Young or unsuccessful salespeople are often heard to say, "I am all right until I start to close. Then I just do the same, able to put in over like a football team that can make its first down in the middle of the field but lacks a punch to go the last 10 yards for a touchdown. I am good salesman but a poor closer." There are many some truth in this analysis of the difficulty, but more often than not the trouble lies further back in the sales. The person who's really good salesman all the way through in the interview will not experience chronic difficulty. This should be this should not be interpreted as meaning that the prospective salesperson need give no special study to this space of selling. Indeed, there is reason to feel that this is where have been somewhat neglected in recent years. It should be inferred that every presentation should result in saying, "No one ever made such a record. The best person can sell only a fraction of the prospect called upon, but there is a tremendous difference between a baseball player who hits 250 and one who hits 350. The same is true of salesperson." Reverting once more to our golf analogy, the closing effort is likely the golfer effort to the hole out. All that has gone before, no matter as brilliantly executed, avails nothing if the final put refuse to drop. The golfing adage, if you can't put, you can't win, can be matched by the selling slogan, if you can close, you can sell. You can sell. The person who is uncertain of his closing ability is handicapped throughout the presentation, for he cannot help being worried about implementing obstacles with which he has so much difficulty. Some people actually develop a fear of closing, eventually drives them out selling. This usually comes about through a combination of ignorance of closing techniques and outright bashfulness about asking for the order. Many sales have been made simply because the person had fortitude to ask for the order. Reason for failure to close. The difficulty many people seem to have been closing has fascinated and perplexed sales manager for years. Only recent have begun to understand the mental barriers that blocks closing effort. Fear of failure. First and probably foremost is the fear of failure. Most of us are used psychologically programmed towards success as being the only worthy goal, that they are merely through a failure frightening us into semi-practical paralytic state in which are afraid to ask for the hundred of final decision for fear being refused. We seem to think this that so long as the prospect is not asked for the other, we have avoided failure even though no sales transpire. We just do not like to hear such awful words as no, not interested, sorry if I don't want it. Distance bruise our egos and that hurt us. This was the same fear that keeps a young man for asking the certain for a woman date. Even though he's fairly sure that he's interested, he is afraid that she might say no. But no ask, no date, so why not take the chance? Nothing venture, nothing gain, supposed to prospect the say no. Really, this doesn't hurt a little bit. One can learn to ignore, one can develop forgiveness for the world. If you cannot learn, take no for answer. This called to mind a cab salesman who reported to his manager, I could lead him right up to the watering trough, but I couldn't make him drink. His boat bellow. Whoever said you had to make him drink, it's your job to make him thirsty. And bounce right back without allowing to fake your confidence, then you had better look somewhere else for job. You will never make in selling. Guilt. Some people fail to close because of guilt, feeling they are ashamed of their profession. After much research, the life insurance institutes determine the biggest single cause for failure of new life insurance. Agent is that fail uh, agent is that feel guilty about their work. They feel as if they are intruders begging for a living instead of people helping other people solve a serious problem. This guilt feeling usually exists in those who do not yet fully understand the proposition they are selling and what the benefits it can bring the prospect. A life insurance agent who was delivered many fat checks to beneficiaries entertains no feeling of guilt as he see how much good in times of need is accomplished by insurance policy is sold. Such an agent certainly believes that one made the doing the prospect as real favor and being pretty insistent. A no is a chance, not a red light to stop the salesperson. If you aren't proud of what you're doing, then you will better off if you didn't do it. There is no room in selling for those who are ashamed of it. Unfortunately, some people of this guilt stem from the lack of understanding by the person of his purpose is the scheme of things, the importance of his role in our socio-economic system. In perception of need, some people fail to close because they feel little needs to do so. They think the prospect will automatically buy at the end of presentation. Of course, some prospects do buy at the end of presentation, but it has been proved that is a larger percentage of prospect will buy if a good close is used than it isn't, because many of them need push to get them to act. Naturally, inertia stifles many purchase. Is easier to do nothing than take an action. Such prospects need push to overcome their inertia, ineptness for ineptness. For some inept salespeople, just get to bog without meeting objection. The thought of trying to close never enters their mind. They are fighting to their lives, they are confused. They have lost control and they say, the close must so natural to the salespersons that swing into a very opportunity automatically. An analogy of golf seems to appropriate the pro golfer. Give a little truth to singing. He could group in previously the years of practice. It is automatically should with close. Shout out to Anne Marisiga and Miriam Coracha. Cultural taboos. Everyone is raised in an environment that teaches opposed cultural attitude and behavior patterns. Many people are raised into tradition that is something a bit impolite, improper about asking another person for money or to do something for you. Closing means asking for the order. Thus, it can run afoul of cultural taboos in some circles. Basic closing tactics. Aside from the actual closing techniques discussed in detail later in the chapter, that there are certain overall tactics which are helpful in closing a sale. This apply to all sales, whereas given closing technique as application to certain situation. Avoid the interrupting third party. It is usually difficult to close a sale when a third party has intruded near the closing point. The sales rep has succeeded in presenting the proposition so that the prospect is really convinced. Only the formalities of closing being left when a third party drops in. This party is not familiar with the proposition, has no appreciation of its merit, and tends to throw cold water of the whole scheme if the prospect asks him for his opinion. For these reasons, the sales rep should try to close without allowing the interruption to occur. One saleswoman says that she lost because she forgot to bring a blank contract with her, so as their buyer was going to be suggested that they drop in together at the saleswoman office and close the deal. On the way over, friends joined them and so chilled the atmosphere that the prospective buyer decided not to sign the contract at all. It may be argued that this marks of so-called high-pressure salesmanship, and that if a person is truly sold, he will not so easily to let to change his mind. But it must be remembered that is buying something new, the balance is the buyer's mind is very delicate and has perhaps been turned so slightly in favor of the proposition that is requires little to tip scales to other way. This may be true, even though the proposition is a meritorious one, for it may require actual trial by the buyer to throw the balances heavily in his favor. For this reason, when ready to close the sales, many salespeople endeavor to get the prospect isolated in some special office or location where there will not be bothered outsider. Ever notice the closing boats automobile dealership? Many sales are closed at private dinners or clubs where the salesperson has arranged for privacy. Now the car salesman has the prospect in the office talking a deal. It is important to carry on such negotiation is uninterrupted privacy. Even a telephone call blow a deal out of the water. The balance between buying and not buying is the prospect mind can be delicate. The slightest factor might tilt in one way or the other. Simplify the contract. If the seller uses his own contract blank, it should simple and short. The buyer has no time to puzzle out complicated legal documents and search for the joker that the suspect is concealed in the small print. The long order blank, which is in fact a contract, tends to frighten the average buyer unless he has a dealing with the selling firm. Although it's undoubtedly wise, simply the contract this should not be constructed as meaning that it should not be ignored. Indeed, many salespeople have far less trouble with return goods, with failure on the buyer's part to live up to agreements if they go over to provision of the contract with him and make certain they understand them fully. The serious of the contract is thus impressed of the buyer with happy result that goods stay sold. If the buyer is made to feel he expected to live up the contract, he is more likely to do so. If the buyer hesitates as the actual act of signing, the salesman should point out where the contract is binding on the seller as on the buyer. He can show whether the sellers agree to deliver on it before a certain date, good of stipulated quality amount, etc. Sometimes a guarantee is included on the other blank, thus providing a talking point and at the same time furnishing an excuse to bring out the other book or blank. And speaking of the other book, it is a good idea to bring a view early in the interview to accustom the prospect to seeing it, to convey by suggestion the idea that is going to be used on. Various devices have tried to make this act of bringing up the other book less noticeable, but experiences people squanders and bring out no comment or excuse. The contract or order form may be designed so that one or two specifications are left blank and the prospect may be asked to fill them in. The salesman for an air conditioner discuss rather than briefly the down payment and monthly installment. At which point he had the prospect, the order blank and pen saying, just fill in whatever figures would be the most convenient to you. You know better than I do what you can do. In this fashion, he get the order blank and pen into his prospect hand. They will know that line is allocated just below the line that the prospect is asked to fill in. When calling a new prospect, the salesperson like to use an order book in which many order has been written. The act of thumbing through the carbons of these orders while turning to the right page pressure the buyer. He sees that many are buying, so it must be a good proposition. It's failed to his emission tending also with an customer say to break a new book. For no, that is doubtless because a good business and not poor business, thus the new book is used. Uh, I will end my video. I will continue this tomorrow about the close, the selling process, and the title is the close. So I will discuss tomorrow the attitude in closing. So thank you for coming to all my friends and viewers, and God bless you all. More blessing to come. Thank you. Bye bye.